I was recently reading Sandor Katz's new book, The Art of Fermentation, when a line jumped up at me and danced right off the page. Discussing fermentation, eating from the land, and the great need to reteach such sorts of skills, Katz writes, "Culture begins with cultivating the land, planting seeds, bringing intentionality to cycles that we act to perpetuate. Indeed, a more ancient origin of the word culture is the Indo-European root quell, meaning to revolve, from which cycle, circle, chakra, and many other words, along with culture, are derived. Culture is cultivation, but it is not an isolated act. It is, by definition, part of a cyclical, ongoing process passed from generation to generation." That line about sums it up. That's our project here, rebuilding meaningful culture rooted in land and tummy. End of speech. We live in a world where people are fragmented, disconnected from a healthy culture of connection. We've lost our basic knowledge about how to tend the earth and ourselves. We can see clear evidence of this loss in the environmental degradation and human health issues plaguing our nation today. I know I don't need to convince you all of the direness of the situation in which we find ourselves. It can feel overwhelmingly frightening to confront this reality, to observe increasingly erratic weather patterns, to read of the insanely high rates of species extinction, to drive through the miles of monocrop farms that are causing massive bee die-off, and to hear that some of our country's youth have rates of diabetes at 1 out of every 2 children born after the year 2000. Yet instead of despondently sitting back, afraid and frozen, and allowing our communal fiber to unravel, Woolman has decided to cultivate active hopefulness. Some of us were lucky enough to hear Nobel Prize winner Vandana Shiva speak on our last food-intensive trip as part of the first ever National Heirloom Seed Exposition. She offered the advice, "The uncertainty of our times is no reason to be certain about hopelessness." I believe we here at Woolman have taken her advice to heart. As the poet Muriel Rukeyser says, "The universe is made of stories, not of atoms." At Woolman, we are telling new stories. We live those stories out for our students and interns to come and observe, and in so doing, we will call these new, well, actually old stories into being. These are stories of healing the earth and ourselves, stories of the power of community, stories of spiritual and physical wholeness. These are stories that can be read through the blisters on our hands and the tomatoes on our plate. When trying to build connection and joy, the belly is a very good place to start. Woolman has stepped into a national leadership role by building a farm-to-table program that tells these stories as a part of school. As Alice Waters says, teaching kids how to feed themselves and live in community responsibly is the center of an education. Not many schools, not any schools that I know of other than Woolman, have decided to so deeply care for this type of education. We have several programs running here, weaving in and out, all strengthening and supporting each other. Our garden manager, Malika Bishop, who founded the People's Grocery in Oakland, which is an amazing project if you don't know about it, has expanded the scope of our garden immensely. The size of the farm has doubled over the last 2 years. First, Malika developed a partnership with the Yuba River Charter School, and dozens of public elementary school children began to visit our farm twice a week. They now buy produce from us and teach cooking classes with that produce back at their own schools. Just recently, Malika became the farm-to-school director for Live Healthy Nevada County, and we at the Woolman Farm are partnering with several new schools in the area, bringing more children out to the farm to learn and getting even more healthy, organic food into cafeterias. She's developed relationships with other farmers in our area, at Four Frog Farm, at the Food Love Project, and beyond, to encourage these farmers to also invite young students out to their farms. She's trained them in how to engage with children. Under Malika, Woolman started its first ever CSA program, providing 6 families from our community with boxes of produce each week, wanting to be part of the local food solution. Maybe 6 shares doesn't seem huge, but Full Belly Farm, one of the biggest organic farms in California, started with just 12 CSA shares. Now they have 1,500, so just you wait, Woolman. Just this year, Malika got a grant from the government, and we put in an enormous greenhouse in which we'll be able to grow our own vegetables all winter, which is pretty amazing. As the kitchen manager, I found it deeply satisfying last year when in November, our bulk foods provider called me to ask me why we hadn't ordered any produce. After I told him we'd been making a concerted effort to grow our own food, he told me that while that was very hip, we were a very important customer to him, and as soon as we would like to begin ordering veggies from afar, he would be more than happy to oblige. I am hopeful that this year will be the first we don't order any outside vegetables for our kitchen. Jacob, our environmental science teacher, is running another of Woolman's new efforts. Jacob works in the garden, but also in the orchard, forest, and classroom, developing what we're calling a farm-to-forest curriculum. This project consists of creating a holistic farm-to-forest approach to land stewardship that acknowledges the role of humans as active stewards of place. He's teaching that any choice humans make has an impact on the environment, and thus we must intentionally manage for a diversity of ecosystem services. The physical project Jacob is leading will serve as the cornerstone for this new effort. With students, interns, and staff, he's working to reclaim an abandoned old gold mining ditch that circumnavigates our property by clearing debris, revamping a swale to do recharge of groundwater, and planting a permaculture-style linear forest garden that will produce virtually maintenance-free food in the forest all year long. His project will also slow stormwater runoff, provide food for wildlife, reduce erosion, and recharge Woolman's aquifer. With this project, Jacob is teaching students how to combine traditional indigenous relationship to land with a modern scientific method. He is piloting low-intensity fire management strategies, and he's helping Woolman to recreate the historic, species-rich patchwork of meadows, savannas, woodlands, and wetlands that used to be all over this property. He also spent an incredible amount of time last year contacting nurseries and asking for donations to put in a new orchard. His time and energy paid off as he taught students and interns how to plant the 50-plus fruit trees that will replace the aging orchard up on the hillside. That orchard, incidentally, was planted by Vietnam War conscientious objectors who were getting to serve their country by planting fruit trees, which is a pretty amazing alternative to serving as soldiers. Jacob also taught students how to design, plant, and tend Woolman's first edible forest garden that is now nestled just inside the garden fence. The Farm to Table program that I am leading is another piece of teaching that strengthens the school's commitment to this form of education. The Farm to Table program has two areas of focus: in Farm to Table class with high school students and with our intern program. The main objective in Farm to Table class is to empower students with skills to plant and tend their own garden, as well as harvest and cook their own food. The students learn not only how to steward the land, but also how to use the food they grow to nourish themselves. In class, we explore topics scientific, practical, and cultural. We read the poetry of farming with authors like Wendell Berry, Gary Snyder, and Walt Whitman. We study topics ranging from how to compost to pollination, to philosophies of farming and the current farm bill, to urban farming, locavore movements, and DIY food preservation. Each 2-hour class contains a lesson in the classroom, time in the garden tending land, and time in the kitchen cooking the food we harvested. Yesterday, we pressed pear cider from our orchard and planted a winter cover crop seed. I'm not gonna lie, it's a fun time. Students finish this class with at least a basic understanding of how to feed themselves, tend soil, and celebrate the creativity of humans in cities and in countries doing this good work of rethinking agriculture. Last semester, a student from Brooklyn told me that he couldn't care less about growing food. He didn't have any need or want to do it. But after I gave him a seed catalog, told him he could pick literally anything out of it and I would buy it for him to plant, he discovered poisonous cucumbers. I have never seen a student so passionate and attentive about his plant, checking on it daily, giving it tiny sips of water, and ultimately digging it up and flying it in his backpack in a pot back to Brooklyn. Lord only knows what he was planning to do with his cucumber back in New York, but I consider this poisonous cucumber a gateway drug and this a success story. But another element of the educational work that we're doing that often gets left out of these conversations is our intern program. Each year we have 8 recent college graduates who come to live, work, and learn at Woolman. I honestly think the learning the interns do affects them even more deeply than the high school students because it is the first step in their lives post this very clear path of school they've been on. These people are often trying to decide how to spend their lives, debating the merits of various professions and life ways. They apply to Woolman, describing wanting to teach, or to farm, or simply to live a more holistic life than the jobs they see listed on terrifying online job boards would allow. And at Woolman, they learn to do varied, wholesome work that I believe can heal the world, how to tend land and how to tend community. They work in harmony with the seasons, preserving food like crazy for the kitchen in the summer and fall, cooking nourishing meals for everyone who lives here, planting and planting and watering baby plants, feeding the bees out of mason jars through the winter, harvesting and squashing grapes to make enough jam for ravenous students for all year. They learn how to julienne carrots they grew, how to ferment cabbage into kimchi, how to knead sourdough bread, how to tempt 16-year-olds into trying any of the quinoa salad before going and pouring a bowl of Panda Puffs cereal for dinner. But the tasty language of kitchen is not all they learn. They are all in mentorship relationships with students, offering counsel and support to people 5 years younger than they are about life and meaning and purpose. They serve as teaching assistants in the academic classes and are in turn mentored by people 5 or 10 years older than they are. These connections between mentor and mentee were clear and strong in traditional society, and here at Woolman we are doing our best to recreate them. The interns also have elders in our community to learn from, taking nonviolent communication with our head of school and following Doug around, our maintenance man, like puppies to learn anything he has to say. And after a year at Woolman, they go on to do world-healing things. From our intern group just last year, one is now the manager at a small organic grain farm in Louisiana. One is working for the organization Grub, through which she helps to teach about and build home gardens for low-income communities. Yet another is teaching environmental science to elementary school kids in Seattle. 2 are working together on a mid-sized diversified organic farm in Maine. One has just taken a position at Heaven and Earth Farm in our very area, strengthening our local food resiliency and staying in the community he had grown to love. Woolman provided a strong launching pad for these amazing individuals to go and make change all around the country. We need more programs like Woolman for recent college graduates and for high school students, many of whom feel lost or, even if they have direction, cannot get a typical job in this tough economy. We need to send the message that this work is just as important as sitting at a desk all day, working to make big corporations bigger. But people need teaching. Even if they believe in the healing power of this work, most college and high school students in America have no idea how to farm, how to cook, or how to mentor. These are skills we as a society have been ignoring for the last 50 years or so, but they're important skills, skills fundamental to the very essence of humanity. And at Woolman, we know this knowledge is lying just under the surface in the soil of our souls, waiting to germinate. All we need to do is to water just a tiny sprinkling, and those long dormant seeds will wake up and sprout, resilient and ready to bear fruit. As my love, poet Wendell Berry writes, "We pray, not for new heaven or earth, but to be quiet in heart and in eye, clear. What we need is here." We at Woolman believe that all of our programs teach people how to care for the earth, for their bodies, and for each other. And with this knowledge, we begin to patch the unraveling cloth of society. Thank you so much for helping us to do this mending.